You mistook that chaotic intensity for passion, didn't you? You convinced yourself this has to be desire. This must be what deep love feels like when it finally finds me. The recklessness felt exciting. The danger seemed like evidence that something meaningful was unfolding. But it wasn't love. It was addiction disguised in human form. The narcissist wasn't trying to connect with you. The narcissist was chasing a rush, the control, the novelty, the thrill of conquest, even in the bedroom. That space wasn't a place of safety. It was a stage, an arena, a testing ground for their impulses. Never let your spirit question whether you were valued. You weren't cherished, you were consumed like a substance. Think back for a moment. Subtle requests that brushed against your boundaries, then pushed past them, then completely ignored them. Escalations that left you breathless, not from joy, but from a quiet anxiety you learned to suppress. The narcissist didn't truly ask. They hinted, pressured, performed, and created urgency. All that intensity, all that chaos, all that risk, it was never about honoring you. It was about hiding a hunger rooted not in intimacy but in control. You weren't a love partner. You were a means of escape, a vehicle. That's why it still lingers in your mind. The line between excitement and violation didn't break suddenly. It faded slowly, like fog settling over a familiar road. One moment you were captivated by charm. The next, you were alone with a weight you couldn't explain. Feeling exposed, used, ashamed, yet still asking yourself, what's wrong with me? Why can't I let this go? That's the trap. The narcissist's performance resembles genuine desire so closely that you begin to mistake exploitation for chemistry. You start labeling anxiety as passion, but real love doesn't leave you feeling like a storm tore through your soul. Real love brings steadiness, grounding, safety. You weren't chosen for your depth. You were targeted for your openness, your kindness, your empathy, your willingness to see the good. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that love means always being available, always accommodating, always saying yes, even when your body quietly resists. The narcissist used that softness against you. Your generosity became permission. Your silence became agreement. Your body became a space for an addiction that was never truly about you. Not because the narcissist deeply desired you, but because they craved the rush of pushing limits and watching you give in. This isn't about you being too much or not enough. It's about how it works. The narcissist's mind is wired for stimulation, not calm for chaos, not connection. Stillness feels unbearable to that fragile identity. Intense experiences flood them with chemicals, dopamine, adrenaline, a surge not from closeness but from the illusion of power. Every boundary crossed, every rule broken, every startled breath, it all becomes evidence. Proof that they are still in control, still desirable, still powerful. And that illusion is the only thing that briefly quiets the emptiness within. What felt like intensity was never true connection. It was a performance, carefully constructed. You weren't being welcomed into a genuine inner world. You were assigned a role. Your body was the setting. Your responses were the script. The narcissist's ego directed the entire scene. And the moment you stepped out of that role, paused, questioned, asked for slower or safer, the energy shifted, the warmth disappeared. Because a real partner can't be controlled like a performance. Only an object can. And when you began craving safety more than excitement, you weren't being dull, You were being healthy. You were being human. But the narcissist had already written the narrative. If you truly love me, you won't slow this down. You won't say no. You won't need boundaries. That isn't love. It's addiction disguised as romance. Addiction doesn't respect your comfort. It doesn't guard your peace. It doesn't consider the cost to your soul. It only seeks the next rush. Look deeper into this pattern. At its core lies a harsh truth. The narcissist feels almost nothing without outside stimulation. Inside, there's an emptiness, a silence so overwhelming it echoes. And so, they chase intensity, anything to feel alive. Even for a moment, an intense, boundary-pushing connection becomes their preferred escape. Not because it brings genuine fulfillment, but because, for a brief moment, it reassures them, I still matter. I still have control. I still exist. Their inner wiring is contradictory. They crave admiration, yet fear real closeness. So instead, they create a version of intimacy that feels powerful on the surface, but empty underneath, high in energy. But lacking risk becomes useful because it creates a rush, and that rush can feel like connection when someone is starved for it. But it isn't real. It's an imitation, a temporary illusion. And when that feeling fades, the emptiness returns even stronger. Banju experience closeness as a way to feel understood and valued. They use closeness as a way to gain control, emotional intensity. Every step that pushes past your comfort zone becomes a test. Will this person still give in? Do I still have power here? Your willingness to go along with it isn't seen as love. It's seen as validation fuel for an unstable sense of self. That's why everything moves so quickly, why the pace feels overwhelming. The speed is intentional. If they can pull you into intense situations before you have time to reflect, your emotions become heightened while your judgment is pushed aside. Urgency starts to feel like devotion. Intensity starts to feel like depth. And while you're trying to find your balance, they are measuring control. Another boundary crossed, another sense of influence. They fear boredom the way a person fears suffocation. Yet real connection includes calm moments, ordinary experiences, and stillness. But stillness requires presence. Presence requires honesty. And honesty requires a stable sense of self, something they haven't developed, only replaced with roles and masks. So risk becomes a way to cope. Without stimulation, they feel empty, and that emptiness feels unbearable. Plan to understand this clearly. The attachment was never truly about you, but about an imagined version of you, the one who never says no, never expresses discomfort, never asks for reassurance, space or safety. That version doesn't exist. Yet you're made to feel wrong for not becoming it. Because the real you has limits. The real you has depth. And a real person cannot be treated like an object without consequences. They struggle to sit in calm, genuine connection because it requires authenticity, and authenticity exposes what they try to avoid. So every quiet moment gets filled with urgency, distraction, and intensity. Not to deepen the bond, but to escape inner distress. Land your presence becomes a way for them to avoid their own unresolved feelings. Not because a true bond was formed, but because you help maintain their sense of stability. And like someone dependent on a pattern, they will use whatever works, flattery, guilt, sympathy, charm, to keep that dynamic going. even if it drains you, even if it weakens your boundaries, even if it slowly affects your sense of self. Bland. This isn't about excusing the behavior. It's about understanding what you were dealing with, a deeply rooted pattern, often formed early in life, where self-worth became tied to performance instead of identity. Control became a form of protection. Charm became a defense. But understanding this doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. Compassion does not require self-neglect. You were never meant to fix anyone. You were meant to feel safe within yourself. Your body and your presence are not tools to be used. They are parts of you that deserve respect. Anyone who treats them otherwise never truly deserved access to you. The shift begins quietly, not with confrontation, but with a grounded decision: no more. No more ignoring your discomfort. No more explaining why you deserve to feel safe. No more trading your peace for someone else's temporary validation. When that decision settles within you, something changes. The pattern breaks, and they feel it. Blance. That's when what once looked like passion often turns into criticism. One day, you're admired, confident, exciting, magnetic. The next, you're labeled difficult, distant, too much, or not enough. Why? Because you stopped playing a role. You chose to be real. And real people have limits. Real people have needs. People have souls that cannot be crushed and still shine. A person with boundaries threatens the entire foundation of the narcissist's false identity. So the narcissist retaliates not with honesty, but with distortion, gaslighting, and blame. You're the one ruining the connection. You're too sensitive. You're controlling. And when the narcissist moves on to someone new, it can seem like proof that you were the issue. But that new pursuit isn't a victory. It's just another sign of the same addiction. Here's the part that both hurts and heals. The love you believed in was never truly there. What disappeared wasn't a deep connection. It was your role as an easy, compliant source. The moment you asked for safety, you stopped being convenient. The moment you asked for emotional honesty instead of just physical intensity, you became a threat. Real intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is exactly what that fragile ego has avoided since the beginning. So the narcissist returns, hoovering with sudden softness, a shaky voice, a late-night message. I miss what we had. Our fire, our passion. There may be tears, confessions, stories of being broken. And for a moment, your heart softens because you're human, because you care. But don't mistake panic for accountability. Don't confuse fear of losing access with true remorse. This isn't growth, it's adjustment. The narcissist is testing your boundaries. Have they weakened? Can the cycle start again? In that moment, you're not seen as a person. You're seen as lost supply, something to reclaim. This is where your real strength emerges, not in arguing, not in defending, but in stillness. The day you stop explaining why you deserve to feel safe. The day you understand that your boundaries are not negotiable. They simply exist. You don't have to earn the right to protect yourself. You were born with it. That realization makes you untouchable in a way the narcissist cannot grasp. They may lash out, spread lies, accuse you of destroying everything, but that's projection. Beneath it all is an unspoken truth. I crossed lines. I used this person. Your quiet refusal to be used again shines a light more powerful than confrontation ever could. You are no longer a participant in their script. You are your own authority. And when someone shifts from being controlled to being grounded, it sends ripples through every unhealthy dynamic around them. Because a centered person cannot be guilted into surrender. A clear-minded person cannot be flattered into forgetting. A person who honors their boundaries forces the narcissist to face the one reality they've always avoided. Control, they feel powerless. This isn't just your freedom, it's the beginning of their reckoning. For the first time, the narcissist brushes against the truth. I can imitate love, but I cannot create it. I can spark intensity, but I cannot sustain connection. Without someone to override, the performance loses its audience. The spotlight fades. The stage falls silent, and in that silence remains a restless self that never learned how to truly value another. Watch what happens over time. Not instantly, but gradually. Without your compliance, the charm begins to feel rehearsed. Others start sensing something off beneath the surface. Friends notice patterns. The sudden coldness when someone sets a boundary, the blame, the smear campaigns. Anyone who asks for respect gets labeled difficult or unstable. Partners begin to feel the emptiness behind the passion, the mechanical touch, the absence of genuine care. Internally, the narcissist begins to unravel. No amount of new attention can quiet the growing whisper that surfaces in still moments, you're empty. The void you once absorbed through your compliance now grows louder, because this was never truly about physical connection. It was always about identity. And the question lingers, who am I if no one gives in? To avoid that question, the narcissist rewrites the narrative. You become manipulative for having limits, selfish for protecting your peace, toxic for walking away. Not because it's true, but because your truth exposes the performance. If the narcissist can damage your credibility, they can preserve the illusion of being the victim. It's never about truth. It's about protecting the false self. But here's what the narcissist will never fully understand. Truth has a way of moving forward, no matter how much it's denied. It spreads quietly, but it spreads. Every survivor who walks away removes another brick from the wall. Every person who sets a boundary creates another fracture in the mask. Over time, people stop feeding the illusion and begin recognizing the pattern. So, not a passionate lover misunderstood by the world, but someone who violates boundaries while hiding behind charm. The collapse isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's a slow fading into irrelevance as people begin choosing sincerity over spectacle, respect over risk, and mutual care over manipulation. And you keep moving forward, the narcissist will likely never understand why you left. In their version of the story, they gave everything: attention, passion, constant presence, but you weren't craving performance. Your soul was craving safety. You needed someone who could hold you without overpowering you, someone whose love didn't disappear the moment you said no. That loss, that emptiness, that refusal to grow, it was never yours to carry. Let the narcissist sit in the silence they created. Let them face their reflection without your presence holding it together. Your freedom begins the moment you stop trying to fill someone else's void. You were never meant to complete that emptiness. You were given one sacred responsibility: protect the light within you. And now, in this chapter of your life, something meaningful is unfolding. You're rebuilding, not for validation, not to prove anything, but because you're beginning to believe that you deserve more than pressure. Here's a truth to hold on to. Your boundaries are not cages. They are wings. Anyone who treats your no as a rejection never truly valued your yes. Your body is not a place for negotiation. It is a sanctuary, and you are its guardian. Anyone who refuses to respect that isn't a partner. They're an intruder. Real love doesn't force its way in. Real love waits. Real love doesn't punish your boundaries. It honors them. Real love doesn't drain you. It returns you to yourself with greater peace. Real love doesn't use your body to escape emptiness. It meets you fully with all your layers and accepts that your no is just as meaningful as your yes. Healing begins when you stop apologizing for protecting yourself. When you no longer feel the need to explain why something doesn't feel right. When you understand that anyone who resents your limits will never be safe for your heart. You are not broken because someone crossed your boundaries. You are strong because you survived. You are not damaged, you are reclaimed. Every time you say no to pressure, you rebuild a piece of yourself. Every time you choose your peace over someone else's demands, you affirm that your worth was never meant to be negotiated. Let them call you difficult if they want. What they really mean is, you're no longer feeding me. And that isn't a flaw, that's freedom. You are free now to love someone who doesn't need to overpower you to feel complete. Someone whose touch leaves you grounded, not unsettled. Someone who sees your body not as something to possess, but as something to respect and protect. One day, you'll lie beside someone who can hold you without trying to control you. Someone who doesn't pull away when you speak your truth, but moves closer. And in that quiet moment, you'll recognize it. This is what real intimacy feels like. Not pressure, but peace. Not performance, but presence. Not coercion, but choice. You were never the problem. You were the reflection. The narcissist chose to break the mirror rather than face what it showed. But you gathered those broken pieces. And in time, they became something new. Clarity, strength, boundaries. You didn't just recover. You transformed. Your future belongs to someone who not only appreciates your warmth, but protects it. Someone who doesn't just admire you, but stands for your dignity. Someone who understands that love isn't taken. It's given freely between two people who are present, whole, and respectful. Your heart is a home. And the moment you stop allowing someone to enter through chaos disguised as passion, you return to yourself. Not as a victim, not only as a survivor, but as someone fully in control of their life. Someone who knows deep down that real love will never ask you to give up your boundaries just to be accepted. You are not here to be controlled. You are here to live fully, clearly, and freely.